COVID-19 information problem. Actually have like a lot of problems, a politics problem, an economics problem, a health problem. But we'll be talking only about the information problem and how it relates to our journalistic work. And to do that, I will highlight three specific issues, which are basically bad data, misinformation, and numbness. These are just words I'm throwing you out there, but I hope it will become clear when I reach each one of these talking points. And I'll start by talking with the first issue I faced, which is bad data. What do I mean by bad data? I mean, Brazil, as many other countries, doesn't have reliable testing data on COVID-19. We don't really trust our death cases or death counts. It's a huge number, but it's probably underestimated. But again, this is a problem that happens pretty much everywhere in the world. Maybe some developed countries have reliable data, but if you look at this map, which was published by Our Wording Data, which is a very nice, not a news organization, but an organization that works with data to increase transparency throughout the world, you can see that a lot of countries in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, they don't publish the same data as we do. Honestly, I can understand that. It has to do with historical reasons, lack of data policy reasons, lack of technology. But what really bugs me and what I'm going to talk about is our data policies and basically the way in which our government is actually, I'm not afraid to say that it's trying to make people confused and actually hide data from everyone. And to give you an example of that, I'm sharing this Reuters story, which was published in June. June was the scariest month in the pandemic so far in Brazil. The death toll was soaring, as the story says. And our government, especially the federal government, in the figure of President Jair Bolsonaro, decided this was the best time to take data away from a public portal. And to be honest, this was just like the most dramatic point in a problem that started even in February and March, as you will see throughout the topics I'll explain today. And now they have to publish data again. There was like a judicial decision that are forcing them to do so. But nevertheless, this is still a problem. Data doesn't have as many quality as in Switzerland. To be honest, we never actually relied on that. We learned from the beginning that we had to collaborate in order to collect our own data and not be in need of governmental help and efforts to report. And I'll share two specific efforts in this sense, one made by computer developers, one made by journalists, that show you how we are doing that. The first one is called Brazil AO. This is a story about it, Coding for Transparency. And this is basically a group of programmers and volunteers led by a friend of mine called Álvaro Justen. And what they are doing since the pandemic started in Brazil is that they are collecting data from the regional sources. In Brazil, this has been collecting data at the province level instead of relying on federal data. And they are doing an amazing job of cleaning data, analyzing it, and publish it in open formats like CSV formats. And then there's even an API to the data analysis. And this is what I've been relying on since March to do my data viz. And this is something that ideally our government would do, but people have been trying to fulfill their holes that the government is not fulfilling. And another second example, which is more low-tech in many ways, but it's important because it comes from the press and not from volunteers, is that back in June, when all that happened, when the government took data away from their websites, the 6 major Brazilian newspapers came together and formed a coalition to collect data by themselves, much in a similar way as Brazil AO was already doing. But I am highlighting this, and this is very important because if you know journalists, you know that they are like a really competitive bunch. They don't like collaborating too much. They are always fighting for a scoop, fighting for an exclusive news story. And I think this is a spreadsheet in which they collect data. As I told you, it's kind of low tech. But the fact that the 6 major newspapers in Brazil, which used to compete firstly for audience, for stories, for everything, are coming together to have shared information and not only for, competing and have information for themselves, it's a great thing. And I'll show you this chart. This is a very, very simple chart I made around May or June. If you are from a country like Switzerland that has apparently amazing data on COVID-19, you look at this and you'll guess, so what? Okay, this is a line chart with a moving average of deaths per city in Brazil. But to do this very simple chart, there's this huge amount of work being done behind the scenes by a lot of people. So what I'm trying to show you here is that we learned to not rely on the government to make our data collection and their data analysis and to publish things. And since we are talking about the way the government is not playing their role it should be, I'll move on to the second topic I want to highlight, which is hoaxes. And when I say hoaxes, I'm actually talking about misinformation in a very convoluted environment, in which truth is kind of diluting and in which our own government is trying to undermine the confidence people have in the press, as you will see in the examples I'll show you. Since the beginning of the crisis, public officials and their supporters have been trying to downplay the severity of COVID-19. They are trying to say, for instance, as Bolsonaro did in live national TV back in April, they are trying to say that this is not a disease you should worry about. This is something simple and life should go on as normal. Of course, we know this isn't true. But when your president goes into national TV and say COVID-19 is just a little cold, that's something we have to debunk, and that's something we have to fight against. And we have been doing so. Part of that strategy of the government involves promoting miracle drugs. If you are from a saner country, you may not know what this box is. This box is a box of hydroxychloroquine, which is a drug that works against malaria and arthritis and some other diseases, but not against COVID-19. And this drug is being promoted by the Brazilian government as a cure for COVID-19 in the sense that we shouldn't be social distancing or locking down instead, since we have this miracle cure here in Brazil. And I'll show you these examples just to give you an idea of what kind of disinformation are we fighting here. And sometimes it may feel a little bit hyperbolic, but I promise you this is representative of the information environment we see here. This is also made worse by a very violent environment. This tweet you're seeing now basically shows Bolsonaro supporters harassing reporters on the streets. They were trying to cover an event which was promoted by the health ministry, but they were harassed and threatened by a lot of an angry mob, I would say. And this is actually a light example of what we are seeing. We have instances of reporters being monitored by the government and being actually receiving death threats from people. And all of this is made worse by social media. I'll again show you a story that may seem hyperbolic, but it's representative of the overall issue, which is this. This is a true picture. This picture was taken back in May in the city of Manaus, which is a big Brazilian city in the Amazon jungle, near the Amazon River. And it was actually the first COVID-19 hotspot in Brazil. And back in May and June, it was overwhelmed by the disease. And they had to resort to opening mass graves to bury people because they didn't have the manpower and the space to bury all the dead. And if you are a COVID denier and you see this picture, which was widely covered by the press, it was widely shared, you start to question, all the narrative I just told you, this narrative that tries to deny the severity of the crisis. And of course, there was some pushback to that. And when you talk about social media and hoaxes, there are evidence that there's a connection between those hoaxes going out in social media and the governmental behavior. And there's a big head cross on top of that to show that this picture is not true and the story I'm going to tell you now is not true. But this picture started being spread in social media with the following story. People were saying that the local government was actually burying empty coffins to scare people off, and the mass graves weren't real. Of course, this is not true. This picture was taken 3 years prior to that in São Paulo when the local police discovered a fraud scheme that was trying to trick life insurance companies, so people were faking their own deaths to receive money. But this circulated widely and was really hard to debunk. And what's the answer to that? How can we fight all this kind of misinformation? And the answer to that is, of course, debunking. But the question here is how can we properly debunk? How can we fight against that, which can be a hard fight? And one of the answers, again, is cross-newsroom collaboration and fact-checking. As I told you, collaboration was really important in collecting data, but it's also important when we are fact-checking. Brazil has this thing called Projeto Comprova, which was created back in 2018. So it's something that predates the News Coalition for COVID that I just mentioned. And in many ways, it's a predecessor to that. And basically here, 28 news organizations, not only major newspapers, but also local news outlets and communitary news outlets, they are coming together and sending reporters to fact check as many information and as quickly as they can. And this is also very interesting because, as they did with that huge Excel spreadsheet, every newspaper that's a part of this coalition can use their stories and broadcast these stories without working alone. They can crowdsource in the resources that newspapers have in different places and expertise in different areas in order to better report on that. And the second element, which I think is probably the most interesting, is that we need to expand data literacy both for ourselves and for our audiences. And when I say that we need to expand data literacy for ourselves, I mean, when we are data journalists, we are kind of exceptions to a rule because journalists don't like math. Journalists don't like data. They like anecdotes. They like colorful stories. And because of that, our audiences are not really used to numbers, to abstract concepts, and we don't report on that. But in Brazil, something very interesting started to happen. This is a screenshot of the main late night news show in Brazil, Jornal Nacional, which has around 50% of like total TV consumption at this time. And basically, it's a general audience news show, and they started reporting on the moving average every single day. This may seem for us that work with data like a simple concept. It's basically trying to even out the discrepancies in the data, the day-to-day variation. But for a traditional TV journalist and for a traditional TV audience, this is something that's abstract and it's hard to grasp. And we also started reporting on the transmission rates, the famous RT numbers, every single week. And again, this is an epidemiology concept. This is something that's not really common to see in news TV or wasn't before. And by doing this, by promoting these topics every single day, we are, of course, learning how to cover that better, but we are also training our audiences to better understand them. And I believe that they are better equipped, at least they understand better the complexities of COVID-19, and maybe they are better equipped to deal with all the misinformation that's targeted at them. But this also has a secondary effect, which is the last topic I'm going to highlight. And this is what I call numbness. And this is probably the subject I've been working closely with for the last few months. So I'll be talking about a little bit more about my own work here. And what do I mean by numbness? After all this time, we have been covering COVID for 10 months already, and not even me, and I am paid to do this, I can't stand COVID anymore. I can't stand getting informed. It's really tiring. And I can't even imagine how people that are not paid to do so are feeling. They are tired, and this is a problem because, I mean, I'll tell you a story from my parents at home. And I noticed that they were watching this news show and they were waiting for this map. This is a map that's also broadcasted every day. And it shows the evolution of COVID-19 in some states. So the red states are doing worse, the blue states are doing better. And this is good information. This is something that's necessary to broadcast. But they were waiting for that as they were waiting for a weather forecast. They would turn on the TV, they would wait for the numbers to go up, and then they would, turn it off or watch a soccer match and start talking. And it felt like they were getting information, but this information was not resonating as it should for such a grim topic, something that should be scary. And it's not surprising because the year before, to be honest, these maps were never put side by side. This is something I'm doing. This is a map from the previous year in 2019. But this was the way that we used to publish weather broadcasts in Brazil. This is showing the rain forecast for the New Year's Eve in 2019. And it looks a lot like the COVID-19 map. And why is this important? Because when we keep publishing the same numbers every day, they are ever increasing in the same way, in the same manner, in the same tone, this leads to what Stephen Field, which is a database researcher, you may know, calls quantitative numbing. And these numbers stop making sense. It's hard to grasp them, it's hard to put them in context. And the way to deal with that, at least for me, is using what data journalism is using what data journalism is very good for, that is adding context to stories. What is context? It's a very general concept, so I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. Back in July, I worked as a freelancer already. Back in September, I worked as a freelancer already for Agência Lupa, which is a fact-checking agency in Brazil, and we made this story which we call At the Epicenter. And basically what it does is simulating that all COVID-19 deaths that happened spread all throughout Brazil had happened around the user's location. So he inputs an address, and we show this circle. This is actually the location of my house in São Paulo. And all the people, all the white dots inside the circle, around 200,000 people, would have died if all COVID deaths happened around them. And this is a huge area, like a 3-kilometer area in one of the most populated areas in Brazil. And this starts giving you a personal sense of the sheer scale of the crisis. We also did a similar story with the same algorithm and the same approach for the Washington Post in the United States. This is done using census data, so you can reproduce it in your country if you have this kind of data available. And the feedback we got from audiences, both in Brazil and in the US, was great. They came to social media and they came us to say, hey, the way you framed this, the way you published the story made us understand the severity of the crisis in a way that we couldn't understand before. And then I started thinking about why was this working? Why was this great? And I recalled a concept by the researcher Nikki Usher. She's a great researcher on journalism. She wrote a book in 2013, I believe, called Interactive Journalism. And she says one of the key strengths of data journalism the ability to provide both the far view, which is the big picture, the overall concepts, the trends, how the crisis is playing out in the country, internationally, but it can also provide a near view, which is how it affects people personally, how they relate to that personally. And I think we have been doing a great job of covering COVID from the far view, but we should also try to do best in the near view and make people understand what is actually going on from a particular point of view. And hopefully if you do so, if you collaborate, if we debunk, if we add context, we could not end up looking like this. Thank you.